time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment, everyone. Good moment. Should we jump right in and introduce our guest? Because for those of you that are watching podcasts, you know we're not alone. And for those of you in your cars, we might as well share the good fortune, because we're sitting here with a really, really dear friend, fabulous friend and businesswoman, author, Zhena Muzyka. If you can say that name 3 times, you win something.
Signed copy of the book.
You win a signed copy of her new book, Life by the Cup. Zhena is an amazing friend, a friend of the show, and I just want to jump right in here with a little bit of her story. At 24, as a single mom, she had a young son in need of life-saving surgery, et cetera, and $6 in her wallet. And from there became the founder of Zhena's Gypsy Tea. We've all drunk that tea, right? Not right here. And an inspirational speaker to women worldwide, and she's well known for her work in fair trade business practices. Her teas have been featured in Good Housekeeping, the Oprah magazine, and Good Morning America. And we're so glad to have you with us here today.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I love being with you guys.
Well, so we totally broke format today.
You did.
I did. I don't know. I just totally broke format. 4 years into this program, I totally broke format. But so now we'll revert to our format.
I love how the show before last was all about improv.
Yeah.
And when your hand is spatula,
yeah.
Yes, and.
Yes, you always have to say
yes. So I'm trying
and.
to come up with the and on this one. And.
Yes, and.
Well, can I tell you what I want to talk about?
I'm grateful for that.
Good. See, there you go. That's what we want to talk about. Well, how grateful are you, Barnet? And why are you so grateful?
I'm grateful for your spontaneity. I'm grateful to have my friend Zhena in the room. And I'm grateful because I'm cultivating a deeper cut on gratitude. I've been exploring gratitude, which sounds bizarre, right? I'm exploring gratitude. I'm exploring the air I breathe. But I am. I thought for such a long time that gratitude was all about thankfulness. And it is. It certainly is. But I am discovering that there is more for me. There is more to it than thankfulness. And we were out this morning before the show.
All three of us. See how that works? And we were watching this man, this wonderful man, and I don't know how old he was. He was a senior. And he was very beautiful. Yeah, he really was. Very
and
sweet.
He looked so elegant
and
frail and content and so totally present.
Totally present. He was eating like a bear claw, and he was enjoying every bite. He had a bear claw and a coffee, and he was enjoying every...
That's what happens with these guys from the Greatest Generation. They look great in their pork pie caps and bear claws, and he was totally in the moment. Totally. And he was so filled with light.
His face kept lighting up, like he was smiling in moments, but he was by himself. He was just sitting there outside the coffee shop.
So you said at the time that he looked like he was surrendered, which is what reminded me of my gratitude discoveries. That gratitude also, yes, there's this thankfulness, but there is an element of surrender in gratitude. There isn't any control to it. There's a surrender to it, and so you mentioned that, and we watched him, and he was so clearly. Maybe I'm projecting, of course. He looked so grateful for that bear claw and for being in the warm sun.
Yeah.
He looked so both thankful and surrendered, and he had a sense of maturity. He was a man who lived a big life. He'd lived a long life. He certainly had this presence about him. And so there's an understanding, of maturity. Yeah. All these elements of gratitude, understanding, and a certain kind of wisdom and a sort of compassion that comes with that.
and the surrender and the thankfulness. And he had it in his body. You could see he was like stretched out. He had just to capture the sun, and it played on his skin. And you pointed out that he had this alabaster thin skin, so that warmth would go right in. He was very physical with that bear claw. So all of these qualities of what gratitude can lift to, it's thankfulness and more.
And what I like, there's two things that I want to comment on, and then we'll throw it to Zhena because I'm sure she'll have something to say too, because the nature...
She just wrote a book on the subject.
Well, yeah, the whole nature of her work. Work is probably the wrong word. Orientation, worldview, something of that nature. We'll get to that in a second. But
how about her passion?
Is around this, we could use that word too, is around this way of being in relationship with all that is. Two things. One is the clip, and I think people can find it. I think it's called "Surrender is the Last Redemptive Act," from our show, from maybe
I knew that sounded
a couple
familiar.
of years ago. That's one piece that I think is valuable, that coming to a place where we've efforted enough, and there's an opportunity to put the effort down and just be and see what unfolds. The second piece is as a response to indebtedness, which is very in my awareness right now, just how, and you and I, Barnet, have talked about this several times, about how much indebtedness seeps in and kind of pollutes moments which could be very organic, but just how much we organize back to a sense of indebtedness. Our entire monetary system and economy is sort of set up as a debt economy.
And our relationships.
And our relationships, yeah. Because, of course, economy and exchange of currency is just energy. So it's just an expression of a more systemic, it's a symptom of something that's more systemic. But anyhow, all that said, let's shift. So, Zhena, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Barnet was setting up this beautiful metaphor for your work of really being in a state of gratitude as a almost worldview. You know, in psychology, we use the term schema sometimes, which is, yes, it means worldview, but it really suggests a filter, you know, through which we experience the world. And Life by the Cup, your book, and your orientation is around this kind of worldview. So tell us more. Jump into this conversation.
Okay, well, it's interesting how you're talking about gratitude having several layers, because I'm in that experience right now myself. And last week I wrote a blog on my website about surrender, and how through writing this book I actually learned how to surrender. And I've been really examining the ROI in business on love. You know, the love's return on investment in a business. What does that look like? And I've discovered that control and love cannot live in the same moment or paradigm. That control basically is almost an entitlement. It kills gratitude. It kills love. It sucks the life out of things. Yeah, it's hostile, and it has a sense of indebtedness to it, like what you were saying exactly. Like, you know, that man who was eating the bear claw with such rapture and such appreciation. You know, we all sat there and stared at him for a period of time.
It was mesmerizing.
It was mesmerizing. And the fact that he was ageless, although he was probably in his mid-80s, the fact that he was, you know, tasting every bite, as, you know, it reminded me to not slurp my, you know, as I teach the life sip by sip rather than, you know, inhaling it.
Right.
So, you know, I think what I noticed about him and what I'm experiencing in my life right now is the sense that, you know, reciprocity, we don't have to reciprocate everything, like being in the moment and being in love and not trying to control the moment and not striving is really the lesson I'm in right now. Because I left the tea company last June and I have been in a complete, you know, awesome surrender free fall, and I keep finding myself trying to grasp at straws. I'm like going down the river of life, grabbing at branches, like trying to find meaning in my freedom. My whole identity was wrapped around striving. Mm-hmm. I was striving to end poverty for tea workers. I was striving to, impress my New York investors. I was striving to make, a best-selling blend.
You were indebted.
I was. And I honestly, it was almost like a slave to a vision I had that started out so simple and pure. And I'm exploring my next book right now. I'm writing drafts and I'm rereading.
But this one hasn't come out yet.
But I'm a writer.
I love it.
I can't stop.
That is awesome.
But I've been rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh, I love that. Estes' book.
Oh, my God. And I
Archetypes for Women.
Oh, and I read it every couple years. And this time I opened up to The Red Shoes. And I'm rereading that, savoring every second of it, because it talks about how, we make these handmade crafts. Like for me, it was this handmade funky tea, in a handmade can and with all this stuff. And then, I got into grocery stores and all of a sudden the striving began. I had to strive. I had to be in the top 5 or I'd lose my shelf space. I had to do this. I had to do that. And all the while I had a mission to end poverty for tea workers. And that was, volume driven. The more you sell, the more fair trade money goes back. So that was a good striving. But when I lost track of the striving, I was striving for the sake of striving at a certain point. The mission was my redemption. But now I've walked away and I've wondered, and I'm in a surrender. What is it like to not be striving?
Well, this is the big opportunity. Mm-hmm. I ask myself that sort of question constantly. I mean, last night I said to Sandy,
I'm striving to figure out what it means not to strive.
No, what I said to her, when things are going beautifully and it's exciting, those kinds of doubts don't come up. Mm-hmm. But when there's like bumps in the road, mm-hmm. So there's been a bumpy road the last few days, and I said to Sandy, I'm 60 years old. My whole life has been about blasting out of the atmosphere, mm-hmm. to break free of the striving and the entitlements and the reciprocity model and the transactional model. Mm-hmm. You give to get and you get to give. Yeah. And the constant scorekeeping, whether it's in business or in personal life, you do somebody a favor or somebody does a favor to you. There's the part that is like keeping score. Yeah. Well, now we're even. Now you owe me. I mean, it's so stealth. It's so subtle, and as a result, my life, while not free of that by any means, doesn't look like the life I may have had if I had not made it my life's agenda to be free of it. So I said to her, what if I was wrong? And what if it was all a delusion? And I'm so sorry for bringing you into this place of such uncertainty. Because it's so uncertain when you get off that model of tit for tat and Punch and Judy. Yeah. When you get off that model of reciprocity and of having these big agendas, I guess it comes down to, is love enough? And we're pioneers we're explorers of love, and we're finding out. But there's certainly a lot of heritage, legacy parts of me that don't know whether love is enough, because there's no control there.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's a free fall.
Yeah, and you just hope that before you hit the ground, you're going to sprout wings. But you know that cartoon about this guy who's like falling from the top of this big building, and he flashes by a window, and there's somebody at his desk, and the caption says, "Well, so far so good."
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was in Mexico with my girlfriend Sunny Justice, who I have the whole chapter about her in the book is about reciprocity, and it's so funny we ended up on this because she. taught me when I was very, very poor and I was raising Sage and I didn't have a lot of money. She had been the head of sales for Burt's Bees, and when they sold, she made, a lot of money. And she went and bought this massive, beautiful goddess necklace. She said, guys buy a Porsche, I buy jewels. I'm a goddess, So when I met her, I was going through a heartbreak, and she said, put this necklace on and go sit in the sun. And I was like, oh my God, what if it breaks? What if I lose it? Oh my God, it's so big. And she was like, just go allow yourself to soak up the sun with these goddess jewels and be the goddess that you are, And then that Christmas, she bought me my own. It wasn't as extensive, but it was the first gold jewelry I've ever had in my life. And I bought her this little tiny crystal for her altar because it was all I could afford. And she raved about this crystal, and she told me how beautiful it was, and she danced around the house with it. And she taught me, she healed my fear that I wouldn't be able to repay her. And that's one of the lessons in Life by the Cup. And so us talking about this, and you posed a question, is love enough? We have to prove that it is. Because a lot of people are scared to take the leap because we've been told it's not, right?
Well, and that's an interesting place to segue because we have to take a commercial break. But when we get back...
You're going to love these words from our sponsors.
Reciprocity.
Exactly. Or we won't be back.
Love's not enough here.
It's all ratios of growth.
Right. And with that, we're going to take a break. When we get back, I want to talk about a premise which pertains to innate well-being, that we are enough without having to do or be anything. But we, of course, will visit that concept when we come back. So stay with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we are back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thank you for staying with us. You had a thought you were very excited to share, to explore.
Well, is love enough was where we were sort of playing. And there's a premise. And I love, Barnett, what you were saying about saying to Sandy in that moment of doubt, maybe I was wrong,
That didn't go over so well.
Yeah, of course. But the foundation that we're enough and that we don't have to do anything. I mean, what that old man at the coffee shop illustrated so beautifully was a kind of enoughness. And there was enough in the moment, in the coffee and the bear claw and the people walking by, because he was sort of, he was really taking it in. And that's a beautiful premise. And I personally am willing to commit my life to that premise, and then I could be wrong, but we're going to see what happens. That
in the face of no apparent agreement or support.
That's right.
You make these commitments of the heart. Mm. That's really what Life by the Cup is about.
Well, you read it.
I did,
Thank you.
I know. It is about that, and it's about it is about the qualities, the generative qualities that that can be engaged in order to create these juicy, passionate lives of exploration and of discovery. And a big part of that is as you've described, but I think you can summarize some of the experience of that gentleman this morning and what is really developed through the course of your whole book. It comes down to a sense of celebration.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I know you have lots to share about that.
Oh, celebration. Well, so now that I'm reflecting back on the striving aspect and I'm looking at the freedom aspect of, you build a business, I've walked away and looked back now, and I'm writing down for Business by the Cup, I'm writing down all the things I wish I would have known, all the expensive mistakes I had made, all of the times I lost my soul's focus and gained it back, to save people that time and heartache. It's really beautiful to have the perspective. But I think that, I think the gentleman this morning, to get back to him, he was celebrating the sun, he was celebrating the bear claw. But when we talk about is love enough, he had enough to have the bear claw. He had enough to have the coffee. He had enough to have the time and to be dressed well. He had a relationship to life where I think he knew how to play the game of it so that he could create enough of a groundswell so that he could sit there relaxed at this point in his life and really taste that bear claw. And I think sometimes we think that love, like, well, if I just love people, it's an excuse not to work. It's an excuse not to strive. It's an excuse, you know, and sometimes at different times of our lives, that's what's needed. But if we do so with love, that's the difference. Does that make sense?
Yes, there's this balance between striving and thriving, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think strive and love and mindfulness together can actually create a really, you know, I think passion is the new paradigm, really. I think love and striving, I don't think it's striving, I think it's thriving. I think when you're hot on the tail of a mission, like to end poverty or to, you know, I started the tea company by throwing gypsy tea parties, which were belly dancers and tea leaf readers in grocery stores because I didn't have any marketing money.
For those of our listeners that don't know this, Zhena's heritage, her lineage, she is my only gypsy queen friend.
Yeah,
she comes from the gypsy tradition.
Yeah, my grandma Maria was gypsy.
And if you haven't noticed the earrings,
I always have the earrings
or the crystals.
But celebration actually was what drew people to my brand when I didn't have any money. And I actually teach women and men in the book how to throw a gypsy tea party for their friends. But what I envisioned when I was down and out, when I had the $6, when Sage, you know, his life was in peril, like we were at the bottom. And back then there was no health care for, you know, I didn't have insurance. And so I had to try to get him an operation and keep him with me for the 4 years until his final operation because he was open. You know, he was not closed up. Mm-hmm. And I found that, you know, everybody needed an escape. Everybody needed a place where they could eat their bear claw in the sun and be happy. And so I decided that I would create a model, a vehicle for them to come to my tea parties, be set free, get their fortunes read, have fun, learn to belly dance, be lighthearted, and not have a care in the world so that they could experience love at its fullest. And, you know, the busyness of business took hold after many years, but that was really the basis of the brand, and that was what resonated with people. So I think celebration is the key.
Well, resonated is the word too, is that the quality in love, the quality in passion, the quality of feeling deeply rooted in something that's an expression of who you are, an expression of your heritage, expression of what you want to put out in the world, has a resonant quality. And in that context, it becomes very generous. It becomes something that people can get a lot out of receiving it, which is a shifting out of the indebtedness.
Generosity.
Yeah, and that it's an offer that people can receive, and that's a resonant quality. So I mean, that really is, you know, it's a piece of life advice. But it could be a very solid piece of business advice.
Definitely. Yeah. Leading with generosity, leading by giving was the model of the tea company always. And that, you know, it wasn't necessarily great for the bottom line, but it was great to build. I mean, the product's now in almost 22,000 stores. I mean, if you can imagine a girl in Matilaha Canyon in Ojai living off the grid with this little baby, you know, how does that even happen? I raised over $8 million in capital. I grew it, you know, and the story is all in the book, but that was because of my passion.
That's it.
And my enthusiasm and my generosity. Yep. It wasn't because I was tit for tatting. It wasn't because I was asking for reciprocity. It wasn't because I was entitled.
However, when we slip into striving,
yes. That's when
that whole creepy menu.
Yeah. Yep, it comes back.
That is the nature of striving. Is the creepy menu.
Yeah.
Now, so I know you well, and I know the book, and there is a part. You know, you talk about a chapter called "Get to the Heart of the Matter," which for me refers to another quality. I began by talking about my own exploration, my own assembling of the qualities of gratitude thankfulness experienced in the body, not just as a concept, and surrender and understanding. But there's another quality of gratitude, and that's vulnerability. And you explore that very deeply in this chapter of getting to the heart of the matter of what it is to really be close and tender with yourself so you can be more real. So will you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that chapter, there's an earlier chapter called Pride Cannot Feed a Baby. And it was, I was so stoic and so strong because my dad was like this hardcore Ukrainian firefighter savior guy, and I was taught to never ask for help or be a burden on anyone. And so when I got home from the hospital with Sage and I couldn't feed him, or I didn't have any food, I had to ask somebody for food, and the story's in there. And that asking showed me that I was out of control, which was exactly where I needed to be. And that learning to release control was exactly how I became successful. Because the person who fed me that first day ended up becoming one of my main investors and growing the business with me into probably 5,000 stores at that point. So then the heart of the matter was when I actually found that organics had just come out, and a lot of people were saying they were a trend and it's too expensive, you can't make a profit and be organic, blah, blah, blah. So I had these investors at the time that were basically saying, it's too expensive, it's a trend, don't do it, buy conventional stuff. So I took all of the all the roses, it was for the Gypsy Love Blend, and I took the roses that were organic and non-organic, the flavorings and the tea, and I took them to the Specialty Tea Institute and did a blind tasting, and it was a 50-50 split. People didn't notice. Like, it was half of them wanted the organic, half of them said the other flavor was brighter. And I was like, oh, crap, I could be more profitable and do this thing, but I couldn't get myself to do it. I just knew. And then an angel showed up, and she was a food scientist, and she said, well, we make artificial flavors in our lab. And she said, without giving too much away in the book, she basically said, the artificial flavors are missing one thing, but chemically they're exactly the same. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, sun. They're missing sun.
Missing light.
Yeah. And then I knew in my heart that I had to deliver sun. I couldn't deliver something that was, under strictly fluorescent lights and not real and not coming from God and nature. So I made a decision, and I lost those investors. And it was a really tough decision because it almost put us out of business. But then, other things happened, and it's all in the book. So, but yeah, getting to the heart.
But you were very real.
Very real.
Very real with what was going on with you. Very real in shining a light on what your agendas were and what your pressures were, and and very real in acknowledging the pull. Well, maybe I should just go with the flow.
Yeah.
So it takes a tremendous amount of vulnerability to get real with oneself, and not just to skate over the surface and say, I'm just going to do the right thing, without really paying attention, self-respecting enough to look at what are all the voices that are me? Where are they all coming from?
There's a lot of personas in us.
Yeah.
There's the persona that wants to be like, I wanted to be like the CEO, queen of the business world, blah, blah, blah. And then I wanted to be like the passion princess who is so strict in her standards that she'll never
Every
compromise.
one of us is a Shriners Convention. Just get on the bus, put on the hat, settle down.
Totally, yeah. It's business. Byron Katie said business grows us. And
I love that.
Yeah, it's in my intro. I really love her. She actually wrote a blurb for the book, and she's an amazing woman. And she, business grows us, like relationships grow us, everything. If you allow yourself to grow toward the sun, that is our natural instinct. We must grow. We might not physically be growing anymore, but internally we are constantly reaching for the sun. And I think, Gypsy Tea grew me to a point that now, what I want to do with others is I want to help grow them into the best they can be in, business and life.
What is most valuable for me in the story is that it's your story, and it's unique, because one of the things, and Barnett, we've talked about this before, is, in fact, we were kind of all joking about it when we first came in today, is crunching everything down to a 7-step formula. And there is no formula. I mean, trusting your heart is as close to a formula as we're going to get, because the process will not replicate. It's not something that you can say, okay, here's a cookie cutter way to follow your heart. And it's unique to everybody.
Completely.
So we do come back to an innate well-being, that there is a self-organizing mechanism that, and the trials that each of us have to go through, while they can be utterly unique as yours is, now I'm going to contradict myself, but intentionally, they also represent, on an archetypal level, the collective experience of, we have artificial. How do I want to be with that? And I love what you said, Barnett, that going through the challenge of that and all the voices that are coming in, that moment in time is also very important. You've called it developmental, just recognizing that I'm doing the indebtedness. We were talking about it earlier, and you said to me, that's the indebtedness. I said, I know. I can't just shed it because I understand how incomplete it makes things,
Well, eventually, I only know what I know. I can become more and more aware of what I know, but I in the surrender piece, and so much about what Life by the Cup is about is coming to places of such deep knowing and vulnerability. Then something happens that is outside of us. We're lifted.
Yeah.
And, we call it, this lifting comes naturally to us, like soaring to a hawk or something, but we're lifted, we are delivered by life. And we're midwife ourselves, and then we're delivered by life. And we're lifted to a greater knowing and into greater possibilities. But, I don't know who it was. By myself, I can do nothing.
Yeah. There's no such, there's a myth of self-made that I talk a lot about.
It's such a tyranny. It's
a
so
tyranny.
bogus.
Well, and it goes with the 7 stages or the 12 tips or the whatever. I mean, if people are tuning in for that, I'm sorry, guys, you tuned into the wrong program. We don't.
But
do
don't
that
leave.
Well, no. Well, so can I speak to that? Because
Can you do it after the break?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, but tell us. You set up the break. What do you want to talk about when we get back?
I want to talk about how the 7, 12, the formulas actually can work.
Okay.
And how I learned that through writing my book.
We love contradiction. I take back everything I just said. Zena's going to tell you why. But we'll talk about it more when we get back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain. And
I love how you do that, by the way. I love
Muzyka.
how every break you take out your bass and you play that every time.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
I just love how good you are in it. Fantastic.
Zhena, before we went to break, we were contradicting ourselves all over the place. There is no magic formula. Wait. Maybe there is. Tell us about it.
Sorry, I was playing.
No, it's good.
Playing the angel's advocate here.
Yeah. No, we love it.
So
we love contradiction and paradox. We say the middle of paradox is the point of power. We can allow for both to exist simultaneously.
I love that.
So both and.
I love that. You're so good at eloquently speaking to this exploration. But what I found, I did not want to write a memoir when I wrote Life by the Cup. I was terrified of writing any of my own stories. So I actually was trying to create these formulas. And I was like, okay, well, it's going to be 11 steps to business success. It's going to be 7 secrets of happiness and fulfillment. It's going to be, and I kept trying to fit it into that. And what I ended up doing was doing a memoir, a motivational memoir, a personal development book that had my stories in it and stories of other people.
Modiwar.
Yeah, Modiwar, yeah. And I felt very
it's a whole
selfish.
New genre.
Yeah, I was terrified. I told my editor at Atria, I said, I don't want to be in the memoir category because that's very egotistical to write a memoir. It's very, it's the opposite, by the way, but it's very, self-indulgent to write a memoir. And she said, okay, well, I said, I want to write a prescriptive, piece that has my stories to illuminate it. And what I found was through writing a formula, which was stating a concept, the concept I talk about curiosity, I talk about gratitude, I state a concept, then I went into the deepest parts, the deepest recesses of my memory, and told stories of exactly when I learned it. And we forget again and again. We relearn. Our whole lives are relearning, right? But, I learned gratitude once. And the time where it hit was in, so I went into these stories. Well, what I found with my early readers is that everyone put themselves in my shoes and related to it in a completely different way and learned it themselves. So I think the steps can work when they're story. And Barnett, you're so good at story. I think if you take it out of, I'm telling you what to do in the 7th step, you're going to be enlightened by step 7 if you follow these steps. I think if you can take it and relate it to story and telling something that comes from the soul, that's handmade and funky and crafted and real.
Well, there's a resonant quality. We're back to that underneath it. And you're a formula blender. I mean, your whole
I'm
thing.
a chemist.
She's a blender of formulas. I mean, that's the truth, right? You take a formula and you go, well, we're going to change that. And so, I mean, that's the nature. So I'm not surprised that's in there.
But the 7 steps can work. I think if they have a story that's cathartic enough for the reader.
That's real enough.
That's real
Again,
enough.
that's the resonant quality.
Yeah.
The steps are the map is not the place.
Yeah, totally.
That's right.
The steps are the qualities of getting there are the qualities of being there. So just like practices and techniques, those are not the change, but they are the fertile ground out of which change can sprout.
Yeah, it's definitely, there is no destination, and I think if people can accept that, they can then be more in the moment.
Oh, we're back to innate well-being.
Yeah.
Back to the bear claw.
And there's not much to fix.
Then it just becomes creative.
Yeah.
So then these formulas are just different, interesting options that if they're different than the 7 steps that we've all been taught, then it creates space, right? So there's a different way of doing things. Hey, that's cool. Belly dancers, gypsy tea parties, seriously.
And enlightenment.
Well, no, but hang on a sec. So in my particular programming conditioning, right? Irish Catholic, grew up in the avenues of San Francisco. Mom and dad lived 12 blocks away from each other. Grandparents grew up a block down. It's like you start thinking about this way that the rigidity of how my world was held. It isn't in my frame of reference that I could throw a gypsy tea party, right? Not my frame of reference. Along comes Zhena, who I've hung out with many times, and all of a sudden, I'm having a different experience, not within my frame of reference. Now, in the smallness of my small story, I could make you wrong and not want to hang out with you. Of course, I in my life have made the adjustment towards people who are different and said, how cool is this? It gives me space and permission to do it different. Which is why we hang out together and like each other. And the same is true with Barnett, because he brings his worldview, but he's not tied to his worldview. So that is the distinction I want to make.
I agree. I think having standards and ethics is different than having, like for me, I know that fair trade is the only way I would do business. I know there are lots of shades of gray. I know that there are, as long as I don't, like what I set up with the tea company when I left was, as long as it's organic and fair trade, you can keep my name on it. Like the mission is inherent in that company. If you take the mission out, it will die. And that is a standard. But if they want to do other flavors, if they want to do whatever, they still only use my formulas. But if they want to do other things, like cool, as long as it's organic and fair trade. So I think having standards and values is critical. But I think then being just completely open to and surrendering, as you said, is actually really good. I think collaborate to be great is one of the chapters in the book, and I had a really hard time collaborating at first because I thought, well, my name is on the packaging. It's got to be 100% my idea or it's not authentic, all this stuff.
That's tyranny
and I was really, tyranny for sure. And I basically in my exhaustion and defensiveness of defending my idea of authenticity to others, I missed a lot of opportunities. And the chapter in there is when I was finally I opened up to collaboration, and oh my God, what happened was just miraculous. Like, it's like discovering Jon Stewart doesn't write all of his own stuff. It's like there's a ton of writers writing his stuff, but it's all him, but it's still real and authentic.
Yeah.
So the power of collaboration, I think, is really, really critical, as long as you don't, get rid of your value system.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. That's another layer. I was speaking more about the idea that formulas can be expansive and creative and give us other options. But then you went the direction, which is, I'm thrilled because it's a great another thing to feed in there. It's knowing and having benchmarks for who am I and what do I stand for that I can help organize, right? So these choices come in and I still have a foundation, which we've kind of established. The foundation is innate well-being. If I can really get in touch with that, and that's what all the contemplative practices are about, be really grounded in the sense that you're okay.
You're okay.
Then everything else can fit in that in a much more graceful way, including the challenges, right, Barnett?
And let's just remind the listeners, there's nothing to be fixed in you, just observed. I mean, exactly. I think we run around trying to fix and patch and,
but you make a really fabulous point. It's not about fixing, but it is about observing. It is about discovering more and more of who we really are, the beautiful and good and wonderful stuff, as well as the icky stuff as well, to just discover it and own it. And we become larger.
That can be loved too. It can all be loved too.
It has to be loved too, because what we don't love, we push down and it comes at us, and it looks like fate. It looks like it's happening to me. It looks like, I constantly go through my day with my own judgments coming at me. Oh, what a dumb thing. I mean, what is he really, she's this or she's that. And it's always, as we said before on the show before, and so do I. Whatever I think
there's no one else out there.
Yeah, she always behaves in this annoying way, and it's always what I judge in myself and don't own that triggers me outside. So what we're not discovering about ourselves is all around us.
It's being reflected back.
It's all around us. We get all bent out of shape over this thing or over that thing. Again, it's a very fine line between being able to recognize that and acknowledge it and release, forgive it, and let it go. The other side is you recognize and you acknowledge it, and then you double down on your judgment. This is so bad. You're trying to fix it, and you're trying, it's
the imaginary enemy.
It's like beating a puppy.
It is. And the creator, that I am the creator, that I'm creating, and the creative response to it, the way that I can get curious and underneath it and start to excavate and move.
You excavate one cup at a time.
One cup at a time.
One sip at a time.
One sip at a time.
I think mindfulness is everything. Like, as you were speaking just now about if we're not looking at something in ourselves that's being reflected back to us, I automatically was thinking about, I was feeling this morning like someone was being really pushy toward me. And as I was seeing that or feeling like, someone was pushing themselves on me and I was trying to get them to stop, I was realizing where I'm pushy. And I was driving and I was realizing I'm pushy when I'm scared.
Oh, wow.
And then all of a sudden I had compassion for the person who was being pushy toward me. And then I was having a harder time having compassion toward myself for being pushy and not being aware of it. So I think one of the big tricks is compassion is really critical when it comes to exploring the self.
Truly.
If we can have compassion and forgive ourselves for being judgmental or feeling reciprocity or being tit for tat or whatever all of that is, then we can be full of joy and experience life and our bear claw entirely, right?
It's so intricate. It's such a hall of mirrors.
It is.
Because, you're having that experience and I witnessed it and I immediately get on the game board and go into agreement. I agree. And I know exactly where how you're feeling it, because these issues, we're drawn to what excites us the most or what we fear the most.
Annoys us the most.
That is what that is what gets our attention.
Totally.
And so
the squeaky wheel gets the oil or whatever that saying is.
It gets our attention, and energy follows attention, and so it's thrilling to continue to open more and more to reframing our relationships, my relationship certainly with the world. And my daughter would sometimes say, Dad, isn't the cigar ever just a cigar? Can't you just smoke it and move on?
Well, mind is a meaning machine, so it's a dance. I think mindfulness and being trapped by the mind are two totally different state of beings. Mm-hmm. So being mindful that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, although you shouldn't smoke. But
Exactly.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah.
So, Zhena, tell us what's going on. There's so much in your world, always. Every time I'm with you, I'm speaking here and I'm doing this and I'm flying off to there. And so for the audience's sake, two things. One is, of course, the website where they can reach you and find out more about what you're doing. The release date for the book.
Okay.
And then upcoming speaking and presentations and stuff.
Okay. Well, the release date for the book isn't until June 17th.
Okay, great. Pre-orders, they're starting when?
Oh, yeah. Pre-orders have been going.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It's on Amazon, iTunes, barnesandnoble.com, everywhere, bn.com. And people can find me at Zhena.tv, and it's spelled ZHENA.tv. It's
I have to say, that is the prettiest website.
My friend Donna Aragante designed it for me.
It is stunning. It is
I have to go there because I was talking to Susan Leahy the other day, and she was saying, "Oh my God, have you seen Zhena's Zhena.tv?"
It is so beautiful.
So now everyone needs to go there, including me.
Yeah, you need to go there.
Well, and you can sign up there.
Are you?
He's on right now.
You can sign up to get an excerpt of the book.
Oh, great!
Spencer, did you sign up for the excerpt for the book?
Yeah.
He's signing up now.
Nice.
He's scrambling.
And where I'm speaking next, I'm speaking at the Bukhara for the Top Women in Business Awards.
Wow.
I'm the keynote. Yeah, and I'm speaking about a woman's touch in business, how men...
That's a different show.
Yeah, definitely how men build infrastructure and women breathe life into it. And so I'm going to be exploring some new ideas on stage in front of 400 people. Yeah, I hope I don't piss anyone off.
You won't.
But and then I'm doing a lot of public speaking, and my book has been it's being turned into a show.
Yeah, that's exciting. Can you talk about that yet?
I can't talk about it yet, but it's
when it's formally announced, I'll talk about it here.
Yeah, we'll be making an announcement soon. It's very exciting. It's with a great group of people in Hollywood that I truly love, and
big star.
A big star. Yeah, very exciting. So, and my daughter's 4, my son is 14 and healthy and beautiful now.
2 more big stars.
So my life is, really full and delicious, and I'm coaching women, and I'm looking for great books for my publisher. So
beautiful.
Fantastic.
And we are looking for more audience to come and join us here every week. And if you like us in the various places we like to be liked.
Yeah,
that's usually your job.
Get a sandwich board and
that's right.
Walk out in front
Go walk down Hollywood Boulevard.
And
keep coming back to kind of get consciousness.
We'll talk for listeners.
Thanks for listening.